You can't make this stuff up. Let's see if he makes the raise.
He's thinking.
Throws him away.
Are poker players secretly risk averse? Going to look a little bit at risk aversion and poker in this series where looking at economics and poker and how the two are related. Pleased to be joined again by Eric Dunaway. Eric, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And we're going to jump right in. We've got a few clips to show. Poker players are obviously gambling. So there's some risk-loving nature for poker players in order to be at the table in general. But we're going to see a bit of risk aversion here. And let's start with the first clip with everybody's favorite poker player, Phil Hellmuth.
You're the rest of the world. You got to take the math.
All right.
Oh, sounds like he will.
Good luck, guys.
And Phil can't push in his chips fast enough.
Phil being Phil. All in. It's a great expression on Brett Ritchie's face.
Like a mid-range short stacks?
That's why you lay it down.
Phil, Ivy wants to know if you want insurance.
Oh.
Yes, I do.
Ivy wants a piece of the action.
What am I? 6-1, right? Okay, I'll take it for 4.5. 20,000 to 90,000.
You got it.
Okay. Honey, I just insured the hand.
Ivy shimmy shammed Hellmuth.
If we lose the pot, Ivy has to pay me $90,000. We got insurance.
All right, here's the flop. King, Jack, 8, 3-0 cards to Richie.
Pair the board and let's just end
Looking
it.
good, Phil.
All right, turn card is a king, and that ends it. Richie is drawing dead, and Phil Hellmuth wins the hand.
There's the rest of the world, and there's me.
That's a great way to end that.
Just an amazing clip. So, insurance markets, insurance companies will create markets and just about anything to insure. And here, another poker professional, Phil Ivey, creates he's the insurance company here and decides to insure the hand. And it gives us an opportunity to talk about what we call risk aversion.
Yes. And the idea that, the rational human being tends to show some degree of being averse to risk, that we're willing to pay more than what is fair just to avoid a loss-based risky situation, which, from Helmut's perspective, that's probably what he was in. He's got pocket aces, he is very, very likely to win that hand, but it's never a sure thing. He could draw very poorly and lose there. And so there was an
so if he if he loses the hand, he will be paid $90,000 from Phil Ivey. If he wins the hand, he has to pay Phil Ivey $20,000. Looking through there, pocket aces in that case, I ran it through numbers once. I think it was like in the high 80s to win that. The fair amount would have been closer to like $15,000.
Okay.
To that's how much Phil Ivey would have paid if it was a perfectly fair bet.
Yeah.
He would have risked 16,000 to get 90. So he's paying a pretty significant premium here.
Yeah, the risk premium on that one, we calculate that in an insurance situation by taking what he's actually paying, the $20,000, and we would subtract out the actuarially fair premium. Basically, what's the expected cost of the seller in this case? And so, he's paying $5,000 more than what's fair just to avoid the risk.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. And it still does not mean he's necessarily irrational in this case, which I find interesting. Just like there are some insurance you're just mandated to buy. You must have some sort of car insurance if you're driving, at least in the US and most countries. But then there might be other insurance where you don't have to have it. But perhaps you have insurance, fire insurance if you have a mortgage is certainly required, or let's say it's flood insurance or whatever type of insurance. If an event is only going to happen, 1 in 10,000 times within a year, if you're spending, if you have to spend, $100, it should be for $1 million payout if something happens, right? That's the actuarially fair value. But if your house gets destroyed by a fire and it's a $300 or $400 or $500,000 home, that's completely financially devastating to you. Whereas the $100 for a year is a payment, and nobody wants to pay the 100, but it's not a life-changing thing. It's rational, even though it's a bad gamble, quote unquote, in terms of your actuarial outcome, still is rational because of risk aversion, which is natural really for most people to have at some level.
And we kind of think about that in those situations where, your home would be destroyed, even though that it's such a low likelihood of happening. If that were to happen, it would be absolutely devastating to you. That it would affect everything that you do. And so when you put it in a context like that, maybe $100 isn't that bad. We're just smoothing it out. That's all we're doing. Now, for Phil Hellmuth, it was not going to be a devastating situation, maybe to his ego if he had lost that hand. But he was still, he wanted to guarantee that he was going to walk away from that hand with some money, and he was willing to give up some of that instance if he won in order to make sure he walked away net positive.
I've heard the term emotional hedging on this. He still wants to win, but if he gets the loss, that's fine. I know some people who've, they bet against their own team. They still want their team to win, but it cushions the blow a little bit if their own team wins.
The silver lining.
The silver lining. We've talked about big purchases. On the flip side is like you can go buy a $40 microwave now and they'll offer you. Do you ever buy the insurance the stores offer? Yeah.
Nope, I don't.
Those things. They're not offering those because they lose money on those.
Yeah, exactly.
Deals. Well, that was clip 1 to show a little bit on risk aversion. Let's go to a second clip that highlights it. This is involving a poker hand with, described by one of the world's most popular poker vloggers, Brad Owen.
Table agrees to play a round of the stand-up game when we pick up pocket queens and cutoff. This is the situation that we dream about. Under the gun +1 raises to 300. The opponent is Ralph Long. He's been a high-stakes cash game crusher for a long time. He also helps organize the game. I played with him quite a bit. I 3-bet to 1100. When we're playing the stand-up game, I tend to use larger sizings, whether I've got a big hand like right now or when I'm bluffing. Winning any pot is good for us so that we can avoid having to pay each player at the table $300. Larger bet sizes disincentivizes opponents from getting involved or punishes them when they do, and we show up at the top of our range. Small blind wants his seat back. He cold 4-bets to 3,300. There's no way we're folding when everyone has extra motivation to play aggressively. Things heat up even more when the action's back on under the gun +1. He's not folding either. He 5-bets to 7,000. We've got the third best hand in poker with 17,000 in front of us, facing an absurd amount of aggression. This isn't a fist pump rip. One or both opponents could have us beat. The small blind is the same player who ripped it for 28,000 with 7 deuces spades earlier in the bomb pot. He's capable of 4-betting light when he needs to. I'm giving a lot more credit to this 5-bet, but queens is just too good to lay down for less than 200 big blinds when the stand-up game's on. We rip it for 17,000 total. Our decision's been made. What happens next is out of our hands. The small blind's 4-bet was all bark and no bite. He folds. Ralph indicates that he has a strong hand, but he doesn't snap call, so I'm feeling much more confident that we're either ahead or flipping against ace-king. We get a count of my chips to confirm that it's 17,000 total. Ralph makes the call. We're going to be playing an all-in pot of almost $40,000.
What, twice?
It's a few.
Twice.
We're running it 2 times against ace-king offsuit. The first run out will determine which one of us gets to win the seat back for the stand-up game, so we really want to at least win that one, especially because then we get to free roll the second run out. My heart's racing as we're about to play a pot bigger than my bankroll when I first moved out to Vegas. The flop comes 10-4-3 with 2 clubs. The opponent has some backdoor draws, but this is a good one for us considering we didn't improve. It's a great start to help us get our seat back and potentially scoop a huge all-in. If I knew this flop was coming, I'd have just run it once. The turn is the ace of spades, completely turning everything around with the flip of a card. We're down to 2 outs if we want to win the first half of the pot and avoid losing the stand-up game. The river is the 9 of diamonds, ending the first run out, my hopes of scooping the pot, and my hopes of getting out of the stand-up game. This was a brutal turn card that completely wrecks me. The second flop comes 9-6-3 with 2 spades. Again, it starts out safe, but we have to fade 2 overs with 2 more cards to come. The turn is the 6 of clubs pairing the board. I'm feeling a lot better now that we have a solid shot at winning at least half the pot, but I'm not taking my chips back just yet. The river is the 8 of clubs. We get to breathe again, winning on the second run out. Thankfully, Ralph chose to run it.
I like this one, and I actually see 2 things going on right here. They're a little bit separate. And so the big thing, of course, is the running it twice.
Yeah.
And that's a whole idea that if you're going to win one hand, you're just as likely to win the second hand as you were the first hand. I mean, realistically, the odds don't change that much.
No, the odds should be exact. The equity is exactly the same.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
But what changes is the variance.
Correct.
So that when your likelihood of winning or at least breaking even goes way up, especially if you have a decent equity in that pot.
Yeah. So the amount, if they played this a million, queens versus ace king, I think it was ace king offsuit in this case. What about, I think queens are 57% versus 43. So if they played it an infinite number of times, 57% of that pot goes to Brad Owen. But they're playing it once and they switch to play it twice. So it's far less likely to lose the hand outright. It's also it's less likely to win it outright. Really smooth the variance.
Because just if we just approximated this to about 50% chance of winning, call this a coin flip right here.
Yep.
When he runs it once, either 50% he walks away with everything, 50% he walks away with nothing. But if they run it twice, 25% of the time he walks away with everything, 50% of the time he breaks even, and 25% of the time he walks away with nothing. So all of a sudden we just created this buffer zone where you don't lose any money.
Correct. And what I find fascinating in thinking about this, I think for poker professionals, running it twice can make a lot of sense, especially if it's a higher stakes game. It can smooth out the variance a little bit. The thing that can be the single most devastating thing to a poker professional who is, if you're a professional that's going to be around for a while, it means you have an edge. On average, you will win, but variance can be brutal in poker. And by doing this, you're smoothing the variance out a bit. If you're able to run it twice a lot, you'll much less likely to be hit by a series where you are just taking these terrible beats over and over. For amateurs, I find it interesting, and I played in games with people who I'm pretty sure are not professionals, and they want to run it twice. And you're there to gamble in the first place, and yet running it twice. And so on that one, I don't know. I mean, it's a little bit of variance smoothing, which I guess might have value. Maybe it's the idea that you're playing 2 hands, and so you're getting 2 gambles for the price of one without really costing you. Maybe I don't know. I've always struggled to think through why would amateur players who are there indeed to gamble be so excited to run it twice.
Especially if it's, a board that based upon what your expectations of the hand, it's very asymmetric.
So we're going to go to a couple of risk aversions. We've talked about the idea of insurance, the market for insurance, and saw Phil Hellmuth be risk averse. We saw Brad Owen and another poker professional want to run it twice because of some risk aversion. The next one takes it to a little bit of a different level. To set this up, this is a game that Poker Stars ran, and they brought in one amateur player here. And I believe, Eric, I think when we talked, this is a teacher that we're about to see. So this is a teacher. And the way that this game worked, I think everybody was staked. I believe they were staked with $100,000. And if they have more than 100,000, they get to keep the profit. If they end up down, they don't pay out of pocket, right? Like they were staked to the 100. If they lose it all or they lose 30,000, they don't have to pay it. But any profits they get to keep. And with that in mind, let's watch the clip.
Aces for the cannon. Still aces.
You can't make this stuff up. Let's see if he makes the raise.
He's thinking.
throws them away.
What?
Folding aces pre-flop, that is not a profitable play.
No, it is not.
No. So the loose cannon, as they're called, the person who staked in the game, he had just won a previous hand, and so I don't know the exact amount that he was sitting on, but let's assume it was $150,000. Means if the game ends at this exact moment, 50 grand. And, depending which state you're in, how long he's been a teacher, I mean, that could be close. I mean, some states that could be more than the annual salary for a teacher. Others, maybe it's, to probably the other extreme is maybe it's 50% of an annual salary from the one game of poker. I mean, this is a big win.
Yeah, it's life-changing money right here.
Yeah, but then it's aces. It's the hand that, at a minimum, the worst possible case is you're 80% likely to win if you get it all in pre-flop.
And he wouldn't have won with that hand, but he doesn't know that.
No. So he has aces and he ends up folding. This is a wildly extreme risk aversion. I mean, we've talked about risk aversion and paying for insurance. And in some ways, he paid for insurance. He paid to ensure he would win. What I find fascinating about this is it's actually the amount he paid is worse than what we see. Because according to the rules of the game, let's say he had 150,000 in front of him, he will get 50.
Yeah, doesn't get
if he stops. The worst case is he ends with 0. Like if he plays and he loses. But if he, given the action, if he puts in a big raise pre-flop here, if he gets all in against one other player, if he doubles up, he's got 300,000. So he keeps 200,000 versus 0. So it's a 80% chance of $200,000 versus 20% chance of 0 versus 100% of the time he gets 50 grand. That's what 160? That's $110,000 he paid for the insurance.
Absolutely, yeah. But again, this I think goes back to another property of risk aversion, is that when we kind of look at risk aversion, we think about something called the marginal utility of wealth or consumption, and this idea that every dollar you get, the next dollar isn't quite worth as much to you as the current dollar.
Correct.
So those first $50,000 that he got from playing this tournament is going to be worth more than the next $50,000 because you think about it, like that first 50,000, you're going to buy those life-changing things. Beyond that, then all of a sudden you're buying things that you maybe didn't need as much. They're nice to have, and we all agree that more money's better, but it's not twice as good.
Yeah. And I mean, you can think about it, and often with students, I might, in diminishing marginal utility, you could explain, every extra, say $5,000 or $10,000 you might earn. Hey, you want it, but let's say you're going from where you're paying all your bills, and then the next 5,000 you earn, you're like, gosh, I could take a cruise with this.
Exactly.
And then the next 5,000, what does that mean? Does it mean you get a slightly better car? Does it mean you take a second cruise, which of course you've already done one, and the second one, hey, it'll be a blast, but it's not going to be as valuable as that first cruise. Each extra incremental amount, and depending on the situation, right? I mean, it could have been a spot where, he's thinking about maybe he had some amount of debt, and like, oh my gosh, if I just fold, all of a sudden I'm out of debt. I mean, this is completely changes the outlook on life.
Absolutely. And he's secured his win.
Yeah.
He could have won more, but in doing that, he chose a certain outcome as opposed to a risk, which is, a hallmark of risk aversion.
Yeah. So the kind of fascinating three different examples of poker players behaving in a risk-averse manner, which, once again, it's not necessarily, none of these are necessarily irrational. Paying a premium sometimes paying a premium for the certain outcome. One case, there was no premium on running it twice. But it is fun, as poker players obviously are willing to risk money. But even among this group, You see the value in insurance, you see the value in certain outcomes or lowering variance. So,
It's as much as they're gamblers, they sure do like the sure thing.
absolutely, absolutely. So, well, thank you to everybody for watching. This is part of a series that will be dropping videos during the World Series of Poker on what we can learn on economics through poker. So please like and subscribe. And Eric and I will be back for more. We'll see you in the next video.